and Protestant. Uh, he's a Reformed Christian. He's a Calvinist. He is overtly calling for a union of church and state as a way to save society. He wants blue laws. He wants blasphemy laws. He has called for a Christian dictator. He says that only Christians should be allowed to hold public office or vote. And in case you have any doubts about whether or not that would include you, it does not. He says Seventh-day Adventists should not be able to hold public office or to vote, along with other people as well. He says Catholics should be allowed to vote and hold public office, but not Seventh-day Adventists, which is fascinating. And the person that he's interviewing is Nick Fuentes, who is Catholic, who also is calling for a union of church and state. He believes in Catholic integralism, Catholic nationalism. Catholic integralism is the idea that the church and state ought to be integrated. That means they ought to be united. And he says, you are either a Catholic or you are with the Jews. Now, this all has shades of 1888, of the crisis leading up to the 1888 experience, because at that point in time, you had this push for a union of church and state. And the argument was made prominently that if you did not believe, if you were not on side for a Christian state, then you're with the atheists. The atheists, the Jews, the Seventh-day Baptists, the Seventh-day Adventists, they are all atheists. And this was the argument that was made in society. And so history is repeating itself. If you want to see some of the other things that were being said, I would endorse a book called The Two Republics by A.T. Jones. Lots of people have this book or had this book. Most people don't read it because it's 800 pages long. But if you want to see something interesting, go to the chapter entitled The Great Conspiracy. Is chapter 25 of The Great Conspiracy. And in that chapter, Jones talks about all of the pastors, presidents, theologians, politicians who were calling for a union of church and state. He's got their quotes. And they specifically criticized the U.S. Constitution for failing to make mention of Jesus Christ. And they called for a religious amendment to the Constitution, calling for it to mention Jesus Christ. One of the people, Dr. John M. Mason, magnified the irreligious feature of the Constitution as one of the chief causes of the calamities of which he was speaking. And we know that that's going to be repeated as well, that people are going to say that the disasters in the environment and the economy are because people are not following God. They're not following Sunday. They're not keeping that American Sabbath, Christian so-called Sabbath. And that means that they have to be punished because they are holding up the progress towards the golden age. And Mason says this, Dr. John M. Mason, he says that that if the Muslims or the Native Americans, who he calls savages, if they would have written a constitution, they would have done it in the name of God or paid some homage to the Great Spirit. And he's saying another writer says, this is the original sin of America, is not having Jesus Christ's name in the Constitution. This is a Christian nation. We need Christian laws. We need Christian nationalism. So all of this has taken place before. And so if you're thinking to yourself, I've been listening to so-and-so at Spectrum News, and he says that there's never going to be a union of church and state. Well, we came very close in the 1880s. Very close. And there were pushes in other countries. Right now in the Western world, there is a movement back, both of which run the world economy and feed people. Like farmers can't do their fields without gasoline, diesel, fertilizer. Isn't it interesting that this whole thing blew up at exactly the same time as spring planting season? And so the farmers now, they're rioting. They're saying, look, they're rioting in Ireland. The Western news, the American news is deficient. You have to actually go digging in other sources to find what is taking place in the rest of the world because it doesn't get reported. People are in the dark. Yeah, riots in Ireland today, riots in France over gasoline, and people are pretty fed up with leftist governments in Europe, and they want to go back. Nationalism, populism, Christianity. That's what they want. And so there's this surge in popularity in most, I would say 80% of the countries in Europe. They want out of the leftist governments, the leftist quagmires, the atheism, the debt, the immigration, legal or illegal. They want to go back to Christianity. So that's what they're doing. There's this huge push on, and that's prophetic. But if you look back at Jones's book, The Two Republics, you will see that this stuff was taking place in the 1880s with